Okay, I think we should kick off. All right. Hey everyone, thanks a lot for joining. Hope you're having a good week and hope your ideas are developing well ahead of the deadline for this year's Mayor's Entrepreneur Award. So this week we are going to be looking at value propositions. This is a super important step following on from last week's workshop on customer discovery about really refining and condensing your value of your product or service that you're trying to bring to the customers that you're serving. So to bring that to life, I wanted to share this stat, which is from a consultancy called Strategizer, which says 72% of product innovations fail to deliver on customer expectations. That is a lot of failed products out there. And so hopefully today, give you some of the kind of tips and tricks to make sure your products are as successful, not just in the application stage, but further into the future as well. So over the next sort of 45 minutes or so, we're going to cover what a value proposition is and what it's made up of, a really useful tool called the value proposition canvas. And then finally, we're going to look at how we turn those customer insights from the customer discovery stage that we covered last week into really valuable products for customers. And then at the end, we're very privileged to have to be joined by George Winfield, who was one of last year's winners with his amazing health tech startup called Spirus. So we're going to have a Q&A with him. And throughout the session, I'm going to be talking and sharing lots of information, but if you have any questions, do feel free to put them in the chat, and kind of intermittently, I'm going to be pausing to have a look at those questions and make sure I kind of answer any questions you might be coming up with. And if we've got time at the end, also going to have hopefully have a chance for some of you guys to share any value propositions that you might have been working on yourself. Okay, so in the most successful products, their value is synonymous with their brand. And to bring that to life, I wanted to challenge you guys to see what words these brands, you would associate these brands with. So the first one, Volvo. If you want to shout out in the chat what word you associate with Volvo. Family car, reliable, power and safety, quality. Okay, very good, Miodrag. Amen. Volvo is across the world synonymous with the word safety. They have built their whole product and their whole brand to be synonymous with this really powerful word, safety. Okay, you're warming up. Next one, ClassPass. Can anyone guess what word ClassPass feels synonymous with? There's kind of a clue in their logo. Convenient, yeah, that's pretty close. Flexibility. So the value of ClassPass as a service is that you don't have to pay for a whole annual gym membership. You can actually opt in and out of the classes that are best suited to you. So their value proposition is around flexibility. Okay, next one, DuckDuckGo. If you haven't come across DuckDuckGo, it is a search engine that looks to rival Google, but does something very different. Speed, privacy, they do achieve those things, but not Google. Trust, efficiency. Yeah, very good. So the word I feel is most synonymous with DuckDuckGo is anonymity, because their value proposition is that they're not just a search engine, they are a search engine that protects your privacy and gives you anonymity and doesn't track your user data and tag it back to you. Okay, last one, Slack. Slack. one of the most popular work tools at the moment. Okay, mere drag, productivity, Joyce, productivity, you are 100% right. Their whole proposition is around productivity, and particularly replacing all of those thousands of emails we used to get into our inbox, which were a massive drain on our time and stopped us being productive at work. Great job. And I wanted to look at some different ad campaigns from Apple from over the last 30 years or so. So here is an ad from the 80s from Apple, from the first time that Steve Jobs was working with them, so before he left. And it is a super wordy, like 2-page spread in the newspaper, and it's talking about lots of kind of techno babble, floppy disks, boot drives, etc. It is trying to tell a story, but it's very hard to understand what story it's trying to tell. You don't feel the kind of resonance that we feel with the Apple brand that we have today. So what happened? Well, the story is famous. Steve Jobs was booted out of his own company and went off to do a bunch of different things, like found Pixar and stuff like that, and then came back and completely revisited the Apple brand and the Apple value proposition. And one of his most famous ad campaigns brought that to life. This amazing campaign where there is not a single word or image about technology in sight. Instead, he uses these incredibly powerful 2 words, think different, and overlays those words on top of photos of these extraordinarily powerful images of artists like Picasso and Joan Baez, the musician, Gandhi, Einstein. And so here he is talking about a different kind of value to technology. He is thinking about the emotional value of creativity, innovation, and being distinctive. And I love this example because it plays into the different types of value that we can bring to our customers, not just the kind of rational value propositions around, you know, the design of the technology that you might be building, but some of those kind of more emotional human elements that resonate so much with us. So a bit about me for those of you who weren't at the workshop last week. So my name is Ed, and my background is in entrepreneurship and education. What I love doing is helping people like you guys set out into the journey of going into the world, finding problems and challenges that are important to you and developing amazing solutions to them. And in the process, learning a lot about yourself and developing all sorts of leadership skills and mindsets to make them happen. Right now, I'm the country manager of an edtech startup called FireTech, which teaches kids how to use technologies like virtual reality, artificial intelligence, robotics. Before that, I founded or helped found 2 different education startups, and also have been a mentor to well over 70 different early stage startups in a range of different sectors. Okay, so what do I mean when I say value proposition? So customers buy based on value to them in what they care about most. You, as a founder, need to be absolutely clear about what value you need to create for them through the design and delivery of your products and service. And helpfully, customer discovery, what we did last week, helps unearth this value by understanding your customers' priorities. So today's session should be a kind of natural segue on from the last workshop. And at this stage, it is about interpreting all of those insights from those custom interviews that hopefully many of you have had a chance to do over the last 7 days. It's about distilling those insights into the real priorities of your customer persona. And these priorities, as I was alluding to the Apple example, might be of different types. They might be needs, like a kind of rational need, but they might also be something more emotional, like a want, an emotional want, or they might also be driven by something that's a little bit more hidden, like fear. So an example of some of these might be cost, reliability, peace of mind, saving time, but also more kind of human emotional needs like connection, joy, happiness. And a great thing to do at this point is to really understand which of these needs are most important. Because typically coming out of a successful set of custom interviews, you will have drawn out a whole bunch of different needs. And the best products actually don't set out to solve all needs, because actually focus and focused product design makes it more likely for that product to be successful. So it's important to be able to quantify the amount that your customer feels that need or needs that problem to be solved. And a really good activity to help you do that and help prioritize that list of needs from kind of highest to lowest is something called the card sort game. So for those of you who are following on the slides, you can actually click through on this link and you should be able to get through to this site called Design Kit. For any of you who have a background in design or design thinking, you might have come across this page. It's got tons of different tools and resources for design and startup development. And card sort is basically about drawing a picture or an identifier of a particular need and asking your users to rank them in order of priority for them as a user. So it's a super easy tool to help you to really prioritize on solving the #1 most important needs for your customer. Okay, and so what makes a great value proposition? And I really like breaking down a value proposition into a very simple framework to kind of bring to life some of the key components of a value proposition. First of all, you need to know who your target customer is. So in this framework, I start with, we serve a particular target customer with a specific need. And those first two gaps are what you begin to solve through your customer discovery process that we talked about last week. And then the next 3 steps are what we're looking to bring to life today. First of all, you describe your product or service, what it does, and some of the features within the product design. And then lastly, you end with the benefits. So the real value that you give back to your customer and also the differentiation. So why they would choose to use your product above any existing solution that might exist in the market today. So to bring that to life, I am going to talk again about the example that I used last week, which is this amazing health tech startup called See the Signs, which is about early cancer diagnosis, founded by 2 GPs, one from Imperial, one from King's College London. And the way they talk about their value proposition using this framework is like this. So See the Signs serve GPs, that is their specific customer. In particular, it is GPs at this moment based in the UK and the NHS. These GPs struggle to catch early stage signs of cancer because they are by definition generalists rather than experts in oncology. See the Signs intuitive AI-powered app gives the GPs the expert tools to predict the most likely cancers and provide referral guidelines. So that is a very condensed description of their product with some of the features that the product includes. And then lastly, they end with the benefits and differentiation. So their app helps save time, money, and potentially hundreds of thousands of lives by catching signs of cancer 30% earlier than existing solutions. So over the course of about 30 or 40 words and a very short amount of time, they've actually condensed a huge amount of value into their proposition that immediately addresses the need for GPs in a way that clearly adds benefit to their lives around time and cost saving, and to patients within the NHS as a whole around lives saved, and in a way that is differentiated and a big improvement on existing solutions. So that is a great example of the kind of proposition that we want to get to by the end of today. And we are going to use this tool that I love called the Value Proposition Canvas to bring this to life. But before I do, I'm just going to check in. So I think I've seen some questions come up. Someone's just asking about classical music. Yeah, my background is in classical music. That's a whole different story though. Value Proposition Canvas. There's a few different versions of this, but this is the one that I prefer to use because it is basically uses the kind of simplest and easiest to use language. It's a little bit confusing because it starts from right to left rather than left to right as we're used to in this country. But basically it brings together your customer and your insights from the customer discovery phase on the right hand side of the canvas, their wants, fears and needs, and some of the substitutes or existing solutions they might currently be using to solve the problem at hand. And then it moves on to the left-hand side of the canvas to look at your product design. What are the features that go into your product design? What experience do those features bring to your customer? And most of all, most importantly, what benefits do they return back to your customer? So we're going to be kind of talking through this canvas step by step to bring it to life. So great value propositions effectively address user needs, wants and fears, and create product features and experience that provide the benefits that your customers need. Your map or value proposition canvas highlights those specific needs you intend to focus on. You can't do everything. Focus is important. So we're going to start with the customer profile on the right-hand side of the canvas. So to break down these different sections and what they mean, needs are basically the rational drivers of a particular behavior. So that might be about saving time, saving money, getting access to something you need more quickly, more efficiently, but they are complemented by wants, which are emotional drivers. That might be about belonging, it might be about trust, happiness, some of the kind of drivers that actually sit behind tools like social media. A big part of our engagement with a social platform is actually driven by these emotional drivers. And lastly, fears. What are the concerns or risks? What are those kind of hidden behaviors, traits or beliefs in your persona that might be affecting the way they behave and the way they respond to your potential product or service? And then lastly, substitutes is what they currently use instead. So for those of you who were at the workshop last week, we used this customer persona tool to bring to life some of our customer insights during the customer discovery stage. And I used this example of Joan. So Joan, lovely old lady who lives in a retirement home 30 miles from London, and she is experiencing loneliness in a variety of different ways. And it would be game-changing for her to have easy ways of keeping in regular contact with her family, hearing their news and reducing her sense of loneliness. And so to bring this canvas to life, I've begun to think about imagining that I had interviewed a whole bunch of people like Joan, imagining what the priorities are from kind of top highest to lowest. So number one, more frequent contact with relatives to reduce loneliness, and ideally face-to-face. She loves that personal connection. WhatsApp's just not going to be enough. Ease of use, because I drew out some insights around her use of technology, and also she feels a lot of pride in knowing how to use things and not having to ask for help. Memorability, so again, she doesn't like asking for help, and she doesn't want to constantly be prompted by other people about how to use something, particularly because she's sensitive about being in the early stages of dementia. She feels pride in front of her friends at knowing how to use technology, and also doing creative things like knitting, and sharing them with those people that she loves. So I've begun to map them onto this value proposition canvas, as I've shown on the screen here. So some of the, I'll just remove one of these. So her rational needs, she wants kind of ease of use. It needs to be a logical product or service for her to use. Some of the fears are around embarrassment, about forgetting things, loneliness. Wants are about kind of creativity and connection. And one of the substitutes she is using at the moment is everybody's new best friend, Zoom. So at this point, I'm going to pause for 1 second, and I'm going to share a step-by-step guide that I shared on in the meeting last week. So in the chat, I've just posted a link for you guys, and this is for all of you to share and to use. And it basically is a step-by-step guide to talk you through how to complete your value proposition. So that means that as I'm talking, you can literally open that up on your laptops, follow through that guide, and even begin to maybe kind of bring together some of your insights and organize them using the value proposition canvas. So that is step one, organizing customer needs into needs, wants, and fears. Then the next step is to start translating those needs into your product design. And this is the really fun bit, because it's where we can all get really creative. So to break down how the canvas works, it has 3 sections. Features, so how does your product work, and what are the elements that actually fall under your product design and product design specifications. The experience, what does it feel like to use your product? And that might be answering some of the rational needs, but also the emotional wants of your customer around the user experience. And then importantly, the benefits. What does your product do, and what benefits does it return to your customers? And I find it really helpful to use a very simple visual tool to essentially start mapping user needs to potential feature ideas. So it is basically a matrix of boxes that have a user need above a feature idea. And so you can write up on Post-it notes all of your user needs and basically start aligning feature ideas. So you start to think about product design not as just an idea born out of, some inspiration you have at home, but really based on insights directly drawn out of your customer interviews. So here I have mapped user needs like pride and recognition and creativity to a feature idea that I came up with, where Joan could potentially save a portfolio of her creative work on the app that I'm going to build, so she can share that with her family. So that is really kind of answering that kind of emotional side of product design, to answer this kind of pride that she feels in the creative sides of her life. A big user need was the frequent contact with relatives, and actually that was the #1 user need. So the feature idea I came up with here is using an AI scheduling tool which gives seamless integration with her family's calendar. So it cuts out all of that annoying, time-consuming back and forward about finding an appropriate time between her own schedule in her care home and the schedules of her family and friends, and solve a big problem about being able to connect with them in the first place. So that's where I thought I could use some AI. Then user need, ease of use. So we know that her tech skills are pretty low, and she actually feels a lot of fear or frustration when she's using technology that she's not comfortable with. So I've made it really important, given real primacy, to intuitive UX, which stands for user experience. I've also highlighted about her the importance of memorability and the embarrassment when she feels when she forgets information. So I thought of a feature idea of having voice-activated instructions. Wouldn't it be cool if Joan, just using her voice, could activate some prompts from the application that remind her how to use it? Or related to that, rather than having PIN codes or passwords to open the app, we could use things like facial recognition. But always thinking about this deep need she has of ease of use, making the whole experience of using what is actually quite complex technology as seamless and easy for Joan as possible. Then thinking about her loneliness, this key challenge that we set out to solve in the first place. And I've actually tried to split this up into feature ideas that don't just address the needs of Joan directly, but also tie into some of the needs of her care home, which might be an interesting way to engage them also in this product. So the first I thought might be a nice feature to think about the emotional side of product design. So every morning she could be woken up with a voice note or voice recording from her family. If she gets up at 8:30 in the morning, she has a note from a friend or a family member saying hi, and it's automatically prompted based on the time of her alarm. And then another feature idea around loneliness is thinking about actually how the care home distributes their support and services for people like Joan. So I've said a feature idea could be that you are able to track mental health of the user of this application to be able to prompt carers around risks. So for example, at the end of a call, there could be a set of 5 different faces from sad to happy, and then Joan could very easily click on the face that she feels at that particular point, and you can use that to build an algorithm to track how her mental health is progressing day by day. So again here, going back to the value proposition canvas, I have begun to map some of these feature ideas to the left-hand side of the canvas. So the features in green, experience in orange, and benefits in dark red. So thinking most of all about the benefits that I want to return to Joan, because that is the most important part of a value proposition. Fundamentally, I'm hoping that this product brings joy and connection to Joan when she uses it in a way that is easy to use, seamlessly scheduled, and also allows the carers that are looking out for her to pick up on any health risks that she might be experiencing. And so to kind of reinforce how this works, I wanted to touch on the value proposition of another piece of software called Evernote. I'm sure many of you have used Evernote. It's basically an awesome tool to remember everything you need all in one place. So the wants are things like a single system that's quick to enter stuff and share notes with people. The needs are about remembering things, saving information, and the fears associated with that are losing stuff, misspelling of losing, but anyway, and being locked into a system, features, benefits, and experience. Features syncing across all devices, so it's super easy to access the information that you need. Includes images, rich metadata, so it means it's easy to search, and the benefits that it's simple to use, fast, and easily synced across all of my different devices. And the experience that Evernote gave me as a user is that I have this kind of external exogenic brain where I can remember everything, never forget, and have everything everywhere. How powerful are those words to think about in terms of the experience that you are giving your customer as someone in the team at Evernote? Okay, again, at this point, I'm just going to pause and check in on some of your questions. So someone has asked, do you do this mapping during customer discovery? So thinking about how you translate some of your insights from your customer interviews onto this tool, I will just jump back to a previous slide to bring that to life. So on the back of a series of 20 interviews with different elderly people in care homes in London, I might have begun to build a persona of someone that I'm calling Joan, the lovely but lonely grandma. And based on some of those insights of my interviewees, I've put together this customer persona, which then leads me to a series of priorities, which I can then convert into a bunch of different customer needs, which I've begun mapping here on the right-hand side of the value proposition canvas. And then I go into the ideation stage and start thinking about the feature ideas that can start solving those needs for customers. Okay. If any of you have any questions at this point, just feel free to keep adding them in the chat. But now we're going to think about some next steps with value propositions. So an analogy that's often used in startups is about building painkillers rather than vitamins. I don't always think that this is necessarily relevant to all startups, but it's an interesting way to think about how acute is the problem or pain point that you're looking to solve for your customer, and how effectively does your product do that. So to bring that to life, a painkiller is something you need to have versus a vitamin, which is a nice to have. So a painkiller solves an unmet customer need, whereas a vitamin improves on an existing solution. So some examples here of painkillers: Google Maps, Amazon Echo, Lyft or Uber, that is providing something that didn't really exist beforehand, whereas the vitamins might be a to-do list. There's 1,001 different solutions to that. Fitness trackers, Nextdoor, which is a social media platform. So when you're thinking about that kind of prioritization exercise, thinking about your customer needs, which are the most important ones to solve, and how can you almost create a quantifiable unit to measure and understand how significant that product is. Just checking out a few of the questions that have come through. If you have more than one product, can the card sort game be used via MailChimp, SurveyMonkey, Facebook to help segment customers? So that's thinking about how you actually collect research from your customers. As we talked about last week, and for those of you who weren't here in last week's session, I really feel that surveys have got a role to play in terms of getting quantity of information, but nothing beats the quality of having real face-to-face or Zoom, in this case, interviews with your customers, where you can actually get them to physically order their priorities. If you're doing it through a survey, obviously you can if there are 10 things that you think might be a need for your customer, then you can get them to rank them 1 to 10. But I do feel in face-to-face, it's much easier to get rid of some of the biases that might be inherent in the way that you actually write or approach your survey questioning techniques. So hopefully that that answers your question. And there's another question here, interestingly, around co-design workshops and interviews. Might also include kind of focus groups in this. My preference when it comes to kind of research and design thinking techniques is to start with secondary market research, desk-based research, to understand the problem at a high level, followed up with primary market research, one-to-one with actual users, ideally at least 20, anything upwards of 50, and you're doing a great job, 50 users, that is. And then you can start building on that with a survey that helps you kind of enrich some of the insights from your customer interviews. And then at that point, you're in a stronger position to have a focus group. I think if you have a kind of co-design session or a focus group too early, you can be influenced by kind of groupthink and the loudest voice in the room and things like that. I think they have a role to play, but that's the kind of order that I would run the different activities in. Okay, so I'm going to jump back into my slides and I'm going to talk about the next step in product design. So thinking about that matrix, that framework I use to map user needs to product features, a really nice way of bringing that together is to create something I call a product brochure. Whenever you're looking to kind of promote something to your users, often use a brochure. And this is essentially what this is. It's like the step even before you have a prototype of what you're doing. So you bring to life your product vision with a product brochure. It's a summary of what you're setting out to build. And within this, you might want to include a visual representation of your product and how it works. So this can be something as simple as getting a Sharpie pen and drawing a picture of what your product is, maybe like a very basic wireframe of the app or the website or the tool that you're looking to build. If it's a service, you could do almost like a cartoon strip or like a journey map of what the product is. Basically, you want some visual way of bringing to life what your product is. But the important thing is you focus on functionality that will produce the benefits to your top 3 priorities, and especially the first priority. So in my case, with Joan, it was about seamless connection with those friends and families that are most important to her. So focus on the benefits and not the tech or the functionality or the product features. Hit the spot, make sure the final brochure resonates deeply with your persona. So here, when you're putting together a guide to your product, you could start thinking about some of the taglines or messaging that brings to life the value proposition. So thinking about some of those examples that I shared at the beginning, like Apple, think different. What are the words or messaging that you might use to bring to life your value proposition? And then the last but most important step, you actually now have something tangible that you can go back out and test with your persona. So I said last week at customer discovery, a really important thing is not to pitch your idea to your users, because you're essentially scientists or anthropologists trying to really understand their user behavior without hearing what your solution might be, because you are learning from them. But at this point, once you've got an idea of what those product features and benefits might be, you can kind of test your thinking with your persona. So some things to include: the name of the product, tagline, a picture of the product, benefits aligned with the product persona's top 1 to 3 priorities, and a clear call to action. And I thought, just because we've got a bit of time now at the end of this session, I thought I would give you quite a fun tool for very quickly bringing to life this part of your value proposition. And it is a tool called Launch a Co. So basically, I'm gonna share this link in the chat, and you guys can actually follow along with me. And what I love about this tool is that it lets you basically generate a logo, very visual, nice logo for your new value proposition in like 20 seconds. So I'm going to make a logo for my new app that I'm making for Joan. And I really want this app to have a name that resonates and feels friendly to my customer persona, Joan. So I'm literally going to call it Hello Joan. Type of business is a social business. Okay, now I can just basically click through a number of different fonts, choosing the one that I like best. This one, it says it's friendly and neutral. That kind of sounds like my brand. Here, calm and friendly. That feels like something Joan would like. Friendly and trustworthy. I'm going to click on this one. Again, neutral, friendly, neutral and friendly, and then sleek and refined. And I reckon Joan is going to like this color palette. So I'm going to click on this color palette. And then I can add a slogan. Let's see, what can my slogan be for my app called Hello Joan? A smarter way to connect to those you love. Kind of wordy, but I can work on it. I wrote smarter because it kind of like infers that it's using maybe more complex technology like the AI that I'm planning to use. And now I can choose some icons. So I can search for an icon that I like. Typed in the word granny. So here are some icons I can use for Joan. I kind of like this one. I can choose 3 different ones if I like, but I like this one. So I'm just going to use that one. And then I can click continue. Continue with one icon. And here, hopefully, yeah, it has created a whole bunch of really beautiful logos for my value proposition that didn't exist 20 seconds ago. And if I find one that I like, so it's got my strap line coming out on some of them. I think I like this one. I can click on it, and in the bottom left corner, click on download. And then down here in the bottom left corner, if I click download, it literally saves different versions of that logo as PNGs down to my computer. So it's a super nice tool and super easy to use. The other thing I wanted to show you is in this, where is it? Yeah, the startup guide. And on the startup guide, I've actually kind of outlined the steps for customers discovery. A lot of you on the chat are asking about last week's session because you weren't there. If you did miss that session, don't worry, because basically I've condensed all of that stuff from the workshop into this guide, which is available for any of you guys. So here are the step-by-step guides here, and a few tools and links that we used last week. And then I've also added some steps around value proposition. So you can see here the value proposition canvas that we've been looking at. There's also a link to the card sort game if you want to use that. And also this matrix framework that matches user need to feature ideas that I talked about a moment ago. And then lastly, here is this framework that I love using to basically very quickly synthesize a value proposition in just a few words. And so for all of you who are looking to apply for this year's competition, which you absolutely should because it's an amazing, amazing thing to be involved with, this is a great way to start your application, because the best applications, and we're going to be talking more about this in the next workshop next week, the best applications have a really crystal clear vision for what they're setting out to do, to achieve with their products. So hopefully that is a useful guide to take forward from this session around value propositions. And even better is at the bottom of this document is a resources toolkit. And if you click on this link here, it will open up this. And this is basically, after 8 years of working with startups, I've condensed all of the tools and books and online learning resources into one place to support with brand creation, product design, strategy development, finance, operations, all sorts of different stuff. And the best thing is a lot of those tools are actually free. So that's for all of you to use. And I will share that in the chat right now. And we're just coming up for 10 to 5, and now I think is a great chance to welcome our very special guest, George Winfield. George, do you want to switch your video on? All right, hey George, can you hear me?
Yes, how is everything?
I'm good, how are you doing? It's been a while.
Yeah, surviving, I think is the way to say it. No, we're doing very well.
Good stuff. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We've got 60 people here today to listen into all of your gold dust advice about how to nail your applications and hopefully do as well as you did last year. So I'm going to ask a few questions. For those of you on the chat, do feel free to drop in any questions you might have for George, and hopefully we can get through as many of those as possible over the next 10 minutes. But first of all, George, could you just give us a kind of overview of the story of Spiras, where it started and where you've got to today?
Yeah, so well, Spiras started really as my master's project, and ultimately with any of them it was to get a good grade, and then with that get a good job in some consulting firm or some financial place. So it was never intended really to end up where we are today. And in essence what Spiras is we develop new technologies and analytics to monitor breathing. And the first one we developed was a paper sensor that allows us to monitor breathing rates from the moisture of breath, right the way from sports and athletes, right the way into medical, where our first application was to predict sepsis through faster breathing rates.
And how did you come across the Mayor's Entrepreneur Awards last year? And talk to us a little bit about the process of going through the competition.
Yeah, so I graduated in October, and it was at that point we were iffing and ahhing about if this was something we were going to give the chance. And obviously with any startup, when you're in the real world, there's bills to pay and just living costs to get by. And someone just passed me through it through the university, Imperial, and they said, why not have a go? And I think Sally will agree with me here. I put an application in probably the very last minute. It was probably like 5 minutes to midnight when we got an application together and put it in, because I just thought, well, what have we got to lose? And in essence,
by the way, as an aside, for those people listening in, last minute applications is probably not what you should be doing.
No,
clearly it worked out pretty well for you.
Yeah, no, I shouldn't be advocating that. It was just one of those things where we came across it late and we rushed an application in to get it in there. But it was ultimately just a chance, it's a tremendous amount of money to get any business kickstarted. And ultimately, in the last year, the network and brand that the Mayor of London has not only provided us, like you were just touching on building your own brand, but when you can attach your brand to something like the Mayor of London, it brings a tremendous amount of weight to any proposal or anything that we do now going forward.
Awesome. Well, it's so amazing to hear your story. What advice would you give these guys who are looking to apply this year?
Oh, I think ultimately, well, what have you got to lose? And I think anything that you apply wise, what we did really was anything you can demonstrate traction or validation towards the idea brings in a tremendous amount of credibility and weight towards any application to show that, okay, you've not only come up with a solution that you think is to a problem, but people are starting to validate that and to gain sort of further traction to demonstrate that this is a really needed solution out there. I think brings a tremendous amount of weight.
Could you kind of bring that to life a bit? Could you give some examples of what traction might look like?
Yeah, so for instance, in our case, we were a very medical focused product, and we were a small nose clip that attaches to patients' noses and demonstrates and predicts breathing rate trends. And obviously with medical, that's a very tough regulatory and clinical roadmap ahead, and that's what the judges will ultimately ask any questions over is how do you get this to market to make sales? Ultimately, it has to be a business, it has to be viable as a business. And we twisted it on its head and got talking to a company in the US where we agreed to place our sensors into their products and digitize and almost upgrade their products with our platform, totally shifting away from all the clinical needs and a very smooth regulatory route to market. And we agreed a deal worth about £25,000 with that company. So being able to talk and say, okay, this is what ultimately we want to do in the longer term, but in the shorter term, our business strategy is getting to market as soon as possible. And here is the proof. Not only is someone saying this is a good idea, but someone had money on the table. And ultimately, that is the best validation for anything.
And out of interest, what does that roadmap to kind of, over the next few months and years look like for Spirax?
Yeah, it's shifted tremendously. Obviously, with what we're happening now, it's a respiratory-based pandemic, and we never ever forecasted for something like this to ever happen. And we've been in consultations with the government, NHS Digital, and we've received quite a number of investment offers from the US because of the innovative analytics and stuff we're starting to do. But ultimately, it's underpinning other businesses. We found that the software angle and the data we're starting to provide with our sensors is that other businesses can't invest in their R&D. So we're finding a tremendous growth in actually underpinning consumer products. And in the longer term, we will go through and get that clinical and regulatory roadmap completed. But ultimately, the secure place to start is to find that revenue wherever it may be. Yeah,
must be very interesting times for all of us, but in your space in particular, to be working on such a valuable and impactful respiratory device. Amazing, really. I'm looking at some questions coming in here. Andrew asks, in your opinion, what set you apart from other submissions?
Another part what sets us apart from other submissions, well, everyone's ideas are great. There's nothing quite like it. You're sat next to someone, I think I was next to a company, Reflex, who were developing new materials for casts, and then the other side was jelly drops, the sweets for dementia, hydrating. So it was ultimately just demonstrating the credibility of the business. How would this survive? And especially the judges like Richard Reed and Cassandra Stravu, proper corn and innocent smoothies. How could we demonstrate that we're the ones that needed the investment at that time? And I think ultimately it was demonstrating any traction or credibility of the business. Yeah,
absolutely. And another question here is, you had a £20,000 grant before applying for the competition. I'm not sure if that's correct. But if so, did that hurt your application? And did judges ask why you needed it to win with traction, with so much traction already?
No, and ultimately, trust me, in business, that's a very small sum of money. For instance, we're now a team of 5 on the payroll, and when you've got employees and you start seeing your national insurance contributions and your pension contributions to people, that money very, very quickly disappears out of the business from that. So ultimately, what we had to do was justify it, because the next part of the question is, did judges ask why you needed the money after traction? It's how do we meet the next part of that deal? That part of the deal was to give them some prototypes to show that we could deliver the proof of concept. We weren't just talking, we had to walk in. And ultimately, to deliver market-ready devices is a whole different matter, and we're talking 6 figures, if not more, to be able to deliver that. So it was ultimately how we plan our roadmap was going to be the next validation of that, of the reason why we needed it.
Yeah, for sure. It goes into big sums in your space, right?
Yeah.
And Hugh says, would you say it was useful having a design engineering background during the process? Are the skills easy to transfer?
Oh, this comes down like to the age-old question: is are entrepreneurs born, or do you learn it? It's like, I'm lucky, I've got my year-end accounts on this screen next to me, because the accountants send me what I have to analyse our year-end accounts. And I think like you have to become a jack of all trades and master of none. And I love the design engineering part, and that was my background, and that's the reason I went to uni and did that, and ended up with the first part of the products. But ultimately, as you grow, you have to get people who are better at that role for you, and let them work in the business, and you work on the business. And I think ultimately being able to be flexible and quick approach into new roles and taking those responsibilities on is going to be what your role is. But you don't have to be the CEO or the MD. You could very much stay within the design engineering role if that's your forte, and bring in someone else who leads the business on a day-to-day. It's a decision you have to make as an individual, and how best you can bring the business to the next milestone, if you like.
And oh yeah, just went on mute randomly. Just before we finish, any last sort of words of advice for the guys on the call today?
What have you got to lose? I think it's just a fantastic network to be a part of. You know, I've met Sadiq Khan, I've gone to events that with people I'd never ever be introduced with. And also another key thing is being a part of the program, not because we were a winner, but even because we were part of the semi-finalists and finalists. We were provided office space for 12 months. And as an early stage startup, having free office space in the office group through Ollie Olsen, who we can't thank enough, was just fantastic. You know, I wasn't hanging out of coffee bars or anything. I had a really nice swish office that I could bring people and present to, and it was almost fake it till you make it. Although we have our own office now in Brixton, it was just something like that we never thought we'd get out of the competition. It was ultimately the cash prize, but that network and those opportunities have really given us a great boost to try and start something here at Spirus.
Yeah, it counts for a lot, right? That support, for sure. George, we should finish up there, but thanks so much again for joining us, and hope all is well with you at Spirus, and can't wait to hear about even more progress into the future. Thanks so much for joining.
No problem. Thank you very much, Ed, and all the best, everyone.
Take care. All right, everybody, just before we finish, we're going to go back to my slides. I just wanted to finish up with a very simple version of my product brochure that I put together for Hello Joan. So here I call it Hello Joan, a simpler way to connect. And here is a picture of my product. So this is looking ahead to the 4th workshop in this series, which is coming up in 2 weeks' time, where we're actually going to look at how to build MVPs, including how to do front-end app design. So that is actually not my product. That is from a very similar product that is out there in this space, but it's kind of bringing to life some of the kind of emotional connectivity that I wanted to achieve in my value proposition. The clearly identified benefit for my #1 priority was seamless scheduling of video contact for regular contact with friends and family, and additional benefits, intuitive usability and daily memories. And the clear call to action for this application is fundamentally connect with loved ones. So that was a very speedy kind of putting together of a product brochure, but with more time, you know, I could put this together into like a one-pager, which I could go out and share with people who live in care homes, their carers, their families, to basically get their feedback on what I think my product vision is going to be. So now looking ahead to the next workshop. So the deadline for applications is on the 16th of May. And before that deadline, I'm running a top tips session for basically talking through what good and bad looks like when it comes to applications. Throughout my time running startup accelerators, I've probably looked at something like 750 different business plans during that time. So I've seen a lot of applications of this sort. So that will be a space to talk through some of those case studies, but most of all for you to actually ask some questions. So we're going to be doing some Q&A time there as well. Before we finish, some final thoughts and takeaways. So I hope from today you've kind of understood how this is a linking process from the insights from your customer discovery stage to the next step, which we'll get to in a couple of weeks, around building your prototype, basically to kind of bring together, consolidate, and rationalize the needs of your customer and how they feed into your product specifications, which will ultimately create the benefits which fit behind your value proposition. So this is like this intermediary step between customer insights and product design, and it is a fundamental one because it is where all of your kind of knowledge, insights, creativity, understanding begins to crystallize into your vision of what you're setting out to achieve. And trust me, if you can get this really well articulated, then your application for this year's awards will be infinitely stronger. So that is my main takeaway for you guys today. As always, if you want to connect, do feel free to drop me an email, ed@futurefaculty.co. Super happy to help with any questions or comments you might have. I've also shared in the chat both resources, the tool, the step-by-step guide, which has customer development and value propositions. And over the next 2 weeks, I'm adding another chapter around MVPs. And I've also added all of those resources that I've brought together. Hopefully this is going to be like a bit of a Bible for you guys to use. So whatever challenge that you've come across with startup development, hopefully you'll find some useful kind of resources or inspiration in there. Right, that is just about it. Thanks so much again for joining. It's always super fun running these sessions with you guys. And yeah, keep in touch. I will also drop my email in the chat. All right, take care, everyone. I hope you're healthy and safe, and see you same time next week.